If you're a man, there are three invisible traits in modern women that are silently destroying your confidence, your masculinity, and your future, and you don't even see it happening. Society, media, even therapists won't dare talk about this. But today, I'm exposing it all. By the end of this video, you won't look at women, or yourself, the same way again. You ever wonder why a man can break his back for years, provide, protect, and still end up feeling invisible in the very relationship he's given everything to? It starts small. You have a bad day, you're quiet, frustrated, maybe even just mentally exhausted. You don't want to talk, you just want silence, peace. But instead of being met with understanding, what do you get? Annoyance, coldness, a comment like "you've changed." The truth is, you haven't changed. You've just stopped smiling while suffering. This is the quiet beginning of what I call emotional extraction, the empathy drain. It's not aggressive, it's not loud. In fact, that's what makes it so dangerous. It's silent, a slow pulling away of emotional energy from the man, while expecting him to pour everything he has into her. It's the kind of imbalance that never gets spoken about, because when a man talks about his pain, society calls it weakness. But when a woman cries, the world listens. And I'm not here to shame that. I'm here to expose the imbalance. See, women are praised for being empathetic, nurturing, emotionally intelligent, and many truly are. But there's a darker side that no one dares to address. That empathy. It's often highly selective. She can cry for her friend's breakup. She can sob over a Netflix scene. She can feel the pain of a stranger's dog dying. But your silent battle, the way you swallow your stress, your anxiety, your despair, that doesn't register. Because you're supposed to be the man. You're supposed to hold it all together. And the moment you don't, the warmth disappears. Not always intentionally, but consistently. And that's the trap. You begin to associate vulnerability with punishment. You realize that the more you open up, the more you're treated as less than. You share your struggles hoping for connection, but instead you're met with silence or worse, disinterest. Over time, you start wearing a mask, smiling when you're dying inside, laughing when you're lost. Because deep down, you've learned the truth that no one wants to say out loud in most relationships. A man's emotional needs are not just secondary, they're invisible. She doesn't ask how you are. She asks if the bills are paid. She doesn't want to know what's killing you inside. She wants to know why you weren't smiling this morning. You become less of a human being and more of a resource. And the more you give, the less you're seen, until you're completely empty and still expected to give more. Now ask yourself this: when did your emotions stop mattering? When did your silence become a weapon used against you, instead of a sign of pain that deserved care? Because here's the brutal truth. Many modern relationships are built on emotional extraction, where she gets to be soft, expressive, chaotic, flawed, and you have to be stable, strong, and emotionally bulletproof, even when you're breaking. That's the empathy drain. It's not about hate. It's not even always intentional. It's about conditioning. Society raised men to suppress and women to expect, and somewhere along the line, love became performance. If you perform well, you're loved. If you don't, you're dismissed. And the worst part, most men don't even realize it's happening. They think something's wrong with them. They try harder, give more, buy flowers, plan dates, smile more, work longer, and still the emotional coldness grows. Why? Because the love wasn't unconditional. It was based on what you could provide, emotionally, financially, physically. You were valued not for your soul, but for your utility. But here's the twist. The moment you stop chasing that approval, the moment you stop begging for empathy, you were never going to receive. Something shifts. You reclaim your dignity. You stop trying to be understood by someone who only listens when it's convenient. And you start listening to yourself. Because at the end of the day, if she only values you when you're strong, then she was never loving you. She was loving the strength she could use, and that's not love. That's extraction. Let that truth burn through every lie you were told about what it means to be a real man. Because real doesn't mean silent. Real doesn't mean emotionless. Real means knowing when to walk away from the person who only wants your energy, but not your essence. And if that wakes something up in you, then good. You're finally seeing the game for what it is. You ever look back on a conversation and feel like something didn't quite sit right, but you can't explain why? Like somehow you were right, but you still ended up apologizing. Or maybe you started off holding the truth in your hands, and by the time it ended, you were the one on trial, guilty for even speaking it. That's not an accident. That's not confusion. That's not miscommunication. That's what happens when you deal with a master of strategic power shifts. What I call chameleon control. Now, I'm not talking about the obvious kind of manipulation. Not shouting, not threats, not dominance. No, I'm talking about the silent kind. The elegant kind. The kind that wears a smile while it rearranges your mind without you ever knowing. It's the ability to shift identities, emotions, and positions so fluidly that by the time you react, she's already changed again. See, a man often walks into a relationship with a clear set of values: honesty, loyalty, logic, accountability. He believes if he communicates clearly, treats her well, holds space, everything will work out. But what he doesn't realize is that not every woman plays by fixed rules. Some play by fluid identity. Today she's the sweet girl who just wants peace. Tomorrow she's the fiery queen who won't be silenced. And when you respond, she shifts again, this time to the victim who can't believe how you're treating her. And here's the thing, each version of her feels real in that moment. She believes it. That's what makes it work. But for you, it's chaos. You can't confront what won't stay still. She doesn't fight directly. She flows around logic, around truth, around consequences. Because when she feels threatened, emotionally or otherwise, she doesn't push harder. She simply transforms. You try to call her out on a contradiction. Suddenly, you're too intense. You bring up something she said last week. You always live in the past. You ask her to be more accountable. You're just trying to control me. Every time you ground yourself in reality, she floats above it, changing tone, posture, emotion, until you're disoriented. And once you're off balance, she moves the conversation where she wants it to go. You didn't lose the argument, you lost the frame. That's how chameleon control works. The truth is, she doesn't want the power outright. She wants it without appearing to hold it. That way, she always has the moral high ground. And when you finally push back, when you stop playing along, guess what happens? She becomes the victim again. I can't believe how cold you've become. You used to be so kind. Suddenly, you're the villain in the story she wrote. You weren't controlling, you were resisting control. But that resistance breaks the illusion. And once the illusion breaks, so does the relationship. But here's the deeper problem. Most men don't walk away after this realization. They stay. They compromise. They think, maybe if I change my tone, or maybe I need to be more patient. But what they don't see is that it's not about the tone. It's not about the approach. It's about the system she's created, one where she always wins, not because she's right, but because she can shift fast enough to stay untouchable. And over time, you stop trusting yourself. You stop trusting your instincts. You start questioning your own reality. And that's the most dangerous part of all. Because when a man stops trusting his inner compass, he becomes moldable. Not by love, but by survival. He begins to serve peace, not truth. He begins to prioritize her comfort over his clarity. And in that moment, the relationship dies, even if it stays alive on paper. But I want you to hear this. If you constantly feel like you're defending yourself against shifting moods, shifting roles, shifting accusations, you're not in a relationship. You're in a power dynamic. And love cannot grow where the truth isn't safe. So if you've ever felt like you're always one emotional shift behind, always the one adjusting while she reinvents herself, understand this isn't your failure. It's your awakening. Because the moment you stop chasing the chameleon, the moment you stop reacting and start observing, you reclaim something she hoped you'd never find, your center. And from that center, my brother, you will never be manipulated again. You've probably heard it before. I'll always love you. Those words sound beautiful, powerful, eternal. But what they don't tell you is that for many, that promise comes with an invisible asterisk. And that asterisk says, as long as you provide, as long as you succeed, as long as you win. And the moment you slip, the moment you fall, everything changes. This isn't the kind of loyalty we've been taught to expect. This is conditional loyalty, and it hides behind smiles, sweet words, and surface-level commitment until the stakes get real. Let's be honest, modern love in many circles isn't about love at all, it's about leverage. Who brings more to the table? Who has more options? Who can upgrade? There's a term for this unspoken instinct that often drives female desire, whether consciously or unconsciously: hypergamy. The quiet, evolutionary drive to seek the highest value male available. Not necessarily the kindest, not the most loyal, not the most loving, but the one who checks the boxes that lead to status, security, admiration. And when that drive switches on, when the hypergamy switch flips, what once felt like forever can vanish overnight. Now, I'm not saying all women operate this way, but I am saying this: you will never truly know until the conditions change. See, loyalty isn't proven when everything's perfect. Loyalty is proven when everything falls apart, when you lose the job, when you're emotionally down, when your confidence is shaken. That's when the truth comes out. And what you'll find, time and time again, is that many who claimed they were ride or die were really just ride until the road gets bumpy. She might not leave physically, not right away, but she checks out. The warmth fades, the respect dissolves, the support you once counted on turns into silent judgment, and if a better opportunity comes along, someone with more money, more ambition, more validation for her ego, she'll convince herself she deserves it, and maybe society will agree, because we've created a world where female disloyalty is called self-care, and male failure is treated like a personal flaw, not a human experience. And here's where it hurts most. You might have built everything for her. You might have sacrificed years, dreams, energy. You might have made her the center of your world. But that doesn't matter if, in her eyes, your value drops. Because for many, love isn't about who you are. It's about what you represent: status, power, image. And when that image fades, so does the illusion of love. You begin to realize that what you thought was partnership was performance. And men carry this quietly. They don't talk about it. They blame themselves. They say, "I wasn't man enough. I should have worked harder." But no one ever says, maybe it wasn't about your failure. Maybe it was about her conditions. Maybe you were never truly loved, only the version of you she could show off. Now, this doesn't mean you stop striving. It doesn't mean you abandon ambition or strength. But it does mean this: you must stop chasing loyalty in the wrong places. True loyalty doesn't flinch when you fall. True loyalty doesn't scan the horizon for better options when you hit a rough patch. True loyalty sees the man, not just the moment. So if you've been through that pain, if you've built an empire only to watch her walk away the second it cracked, don't see that as a failure, see it as a filter. Because when the hypergamy switch flips, it exposes the truth faster than time ever could. And that truth, as painful as it is your liberation. Because once you see how conditional some love really is, you stop begging for it. You stop shrinking to maintain it. You stop trading your soul for temporary affection. And that's when you rise, not for her, not for them, but for yourself. Because real love, real connection, isn't measured by how someone treats you when you're on top. It's measured by who stays when the world no longer claps for you. And until you find that, protect your energy, guard your loyalty, and never again apologize for outgrowing the ones who only stayed for the shine, but never the storm. There's something deeply unsettling about dealing with someone who constantly changes. Not because they're growing, not because they're healing, but because change itself has become their strategy. You know the type. You say something and she's soft, agreeable, even vulnerable. The next day, same topic, and now she's fierce, offended, unmoving. You find yourself second-guessing everything, walking on eggshells, not because you did anything wrong, but because the rules keep changing. And when the rules change with no warning, power isn't shared. It's taken. Quietly, strategically. That's what I call chameleon control. See, this is not just emotional volatility. It's a carefully honed social survival tactic, one that confuses, disorients, and eventually dominates. You go in thinking you're building a partnership, a relationship rooted in truth. But what you don't realize is that you're not dealing with truth at all. You're dealing with adaptation as manipulation, and when someone adapts faster than you can respond, they start setting the terms of reality. It starts small, a shift in tone, a sudden change in boundaries, a new rule that wasn't there last week. You call her out on something and she plays confused. You try to ground the conversation in logic, and suddenly you're being too harsh. You stay calm and direct, but she spins the conversation into something emotional, chaotic, dramatic. You can't win, because the game was never fair. She doesn't play to understand. She plays to control the emotional environment, and the fastest way to do that. Become someone new the moment you get close to the truth. This tactic is devastating because it's invisible. There's no shouting, no abuse, nothing you could point at and say, "That's wrong." It's all in the shifts. One moment she's a victim, the next a judge, and then a lover again. And every time you react, she uses your reaction as evidence that you're the unstable one. This is how control hides in plain sight, under layers of emotion, performance, and confusion. And while you're trying to fix the relationship, she's maintaining command over your perception. You know what's worse? Most men never even realize it's happening, because we're taught to give the benefit of the doubt. We're taught to empathize, to listen more, to be understanding. And so, slowly, you start adjusting. You edit your words. You suppress your truth. You tiptoe around topics that used to be simple. And all the while, you're losing parts of yourself just to keep the peace. But here's the truth. When peace requires silence, when love requires blindness, it's not peace, it's control. And the longer you stay in that dynamic, the more you start doubting your own mind. You forget what it felt like to speak freely, to be bold, to hold your ground. You shrink, not because she asks you to, but because the cost of standing tall became too high. Every truth came with a fight. Every boundary came with guilt. Every moment of clarity was met with an emotional storm designed to knock you back into confusion. But I want to tell you something no one told me. When someone keeps changing who they are to maintain control, they are terrified of facing who they really are. And that fear, that's not yours to carry. That's not your job to fix. Your job is not to stay stuck in a maze of shifting moods and mental gymnastics just to earn a love that never feels secure. Your job is to walk away from the shape, shifting, and reclaim the ground beneath your feet. Because power doesn't live in the performance. Power lives in clarity, and clarity comes the moment you stop chasing the version of her that once made you feel seen and start accepting the pattern of who she is now. And when you do that, when you finally stop spinning in circles trying to decode her latest version, you'll feel something return. Your voice, your strength, your center, that unshakable inner compass that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't bend to confusion. It just knows. It knows what truth feels like. And once you've tasted that again, you'll never trade it for illusion. So if you've been stuck in that emotional loop, apologizing for things you never did, questioning thoughts that used to feel solid, feeling like you've become a stranger to yourself, remember this: it's not that you're broken, it's that you've been dancing with a chameleon. And no matter how graceful the dance, if you keep moving to her rhythm, you'll forget your own. The antidote isn't to fight harder, it's to step out of the illusion entirely. Stand still, get clear, and walk, not because you hate her, but because you finally love yourself enough not to be hypnotized by shape shifting anymore, because no matter how many versions she becomes, the real you deserves to stay whole. Now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. The emotional extraction that left you drained while you thought you were being loved. The strategic shifts in power that rewired your reality under the disguise of affection. The conditional loyalty that was never about you, only what you could provide. And the shape-shifting control that blurred the lines between intimacy and manipulation. Each of these hidden traits isn't always loud or violent or obvious. In fact, that's what makes them so powerful. They're subtle, socially accepted, and often even celebrated. But today the curtain is pulled back, because the goal of this message isn't to plant hate, it's to awaken awareness, not to divide, but to expose the patterns no one talks about because the truth makes people uncomfortable. And yet, comfort never changed a man. Comfort never woke a generation. Comfort never saved someone from silently breaking in the name of being strong. What will change everything is your ability to see, to break the spell of manipulation dressed as romance, to stop making excuses for red flags just because you're afraid of being alone, to recognize that your energy, your loyalty, your soul, they are not free giveaways, they are sacred, and they must be earned. The man who wakes up to these truths becomes unstoppable, not bitter, not broken, but sharp, wise, calm. He stops chasing validation. He doesn't fear walking away. He doesn't need to be told his worth because he's already owned it within. So here's what you do from here. Don't look back with anger. Look back with clarity. Every scar was a signal. Every betrayal was a teacher. Every time you fell for the illusion, it shaped the strength that now lets you rise above it. And if no one told you this before, let me say it clearly now. You were not weak for loving deeply. You were just unguarded in a world where games are played silently. But that ends today. You're not here to beg for loyalty. You're not here to convince someone to stay. You're here to reclaim the parts of yourself that were buried under guilt, confusion, and self-blame. You're here to lead your life from truth, not tactics, from vision, not validation. And remember, the most dangerous men are not the loudest. They're the ones who were broken in silence, rebuilt in clarity, and now walk with eyes wide open, never again fooled by a pretty mask hiding a quiet weapon. And you are that man now, and the world will never see you the same again.